So chapter 14 is the origin of species. This is the same as Darwin's book. And in this chapter, we're going to be looking at how new species arise. Speciation is the process by which one species is split into two or more species. This increases the diversity of life while still explaining the unity of life, or the common traits that we share. So species is Latin for kind, as in kind of animal or plant, not kind being nice to each other, or appearance. So we have pictured here a western meadowlark and an eastern meadowlark. And they look very similar, but they have different behaviors and songs, and they only breed with members of their own group. And so they are counted as different species, even though they're difficult to tell apart from one from another. Humans, on the other hand, look very different, but we are all still one species. So a species can be defined as a group those members can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. This is reproductive compatibility. Now, sometimes we get offspring from two distinct species, and we call these hybrids. An example, as your textbook gives, is a grizzly bear and a polar bear. And as their ranges where they live is beginning to overlap, we're seeing more of these growler bears. So the definition of reproductive compatibility doesn't work for individuals that can reproduce asexually, say like bacteria, or for fossils, animals that are long dead that we don't know how they reproduced. So we have different species concepts that we use for these groups. We can define species based on morphology, based on physical traits. The species can be based on ecological categories, based on their role in the biological community. And then we can also base on phylogenetic characteristics. This involves DNA, biochemical pathways. Reproductive isolation is the barrier that stops the members of two different species from producing viable offspring. So these reproductive barriers isolate the gene pool of species and prevent interbreeding. So there are a couple different kinds. There are prezygotic. If you'll remember that a zygote is a fertilized egg, the prezygotic reproductive barriers will prevent the making of that egg. They'll prevent mating and fertilization. So the first we have is habitat. If animals live in different places, they don't encounter each other and they don't have the opportunity to breed. Timing is another one. Breeding at different times or seasons. And down here we've got the two different skunks. One breeds in the late winter and the other breeds in the fall. So they're not ready for each other. So the two populations don't breed with each other. Behavior is a third one. Particularly in birds, there's a lot of courtship rituals, and if the male doesn't do the right thing, doesn't sing the right song or dance the right dance, the female won't have anything to do with him. There's mechanical incompatibility. And in the picture, the flower pictured here, this hummingbird has a straight bill, and it's able to pollinate this flower with a straight flower. And this curved flower over here is real similar, but the bill of the hummingbird isn't the right shape. And lastly, we have gametic. And this is just that the gametes are incompatible. The sperm will not be able to fertilize the egg. And these are sponges, and they can't fertilize each other. Okay. Then we have the post-zygotic. And as you might guess, these are after the zygote has been formed. And they're not as efficient, and there are not as many of them. Sometimes the hybrids have less vitality. They don't live as long. Sometimes they're sterile. This is a mule, and it's the offspring of a donkey and a horse. And they're unable to have their own babies, so they're not fertile. And then lastly, there's hybrid breakdown. And the rice hybrid on the left and right, here and here, are fertile, but the hybrid in the next generation are sterile, and doesn't look like they grow very well. So the next we'll be talking about how the speciation can occur.